There's a rusty iron box sitting in my cabin right now that can store power for years without losing much charge at all. It's not lithium. It's not lead acid. It's a design that's over 100 years old, and for a while, big companies actually walked away from it because it wasn't efficient enough for the market they were chasing. But here's the thing that got me thinking. Efficient and cheap to own for decades are not always the same word. And that gap right there is where a lot of real money gets made or lost, in energy, in tools, in almost everything we buy. So I built one of these old iron batteries myself for my cabin, and I wanted to find out if a forgotten piece of technology could actually hold up against the shiny modern stuff we're all told to buy today. If you're new here, this channel is about boring, practical experiments that connect to real economic ideas. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, go ahead and hit subscribe, because we're about to get our hands dirty and talk money at the same time. Now let me back up and explain what this thing even is. The nickel-iron battery, sometimes called an iron battery or an Edison cell, was developed in the early 20th century. It uses simple common materials, mainly nickel and iron plates, sitting in a potassium hydroxide solution, which is a type of alkaline liquid. Compared to a modern lithium battery, it's heavy, it's bulky, and it doesn't pack nearly as much energy into a small space. But it has one strange advantage that made me curious enough to try building one. These batteries can last an extremely long time, sometimes for decades, if they're treated reasonably well. There are old accounts of these batteries still functioning after 50, 60, even close to 100 years of use, with only basic maintenance. That's not a typical lifespan claim you hear about batteries today. Most of us are used to phone batteries wearing out in a couple of years, or car batteries needing replacement every few winters. So when I heard that this old design could theoretically outlive me, I wanted to see it for myself on a small scale, out at the cabin. The cabin felt like the right place for this kind of project. It's often a spot where power isn't always convenient, and I already use a small solar setup out there for basic lighting and charging. The problem is, the batteries I've used before for that solar setup don't love the cold, and they don't love sitting unused for weeks at a time when I'm not up there. Iron batteries, from what I'd read, tolerate both of those situations fairly well. They don't seem to mind being deeply drained, they don't seem to mind sitting idle, and they're supposed to be far more forgiving of rough treatment than most modern battery chemistries. So the real question I wanted to answer was simple. Can a design this old, this simple, actually be useful for a small cabin setup today, or is this just a neat piece of history that doesn't hold up in practice? Before starting, I looked into where you can even get the materials for something like this. You can't just walk into a regular hardware store and grab a nickel-iron battery off a shelf. Some small manufacturers still make them, mostly overseas, and they tend to be sold to off-grid enthusiasts or renewable energy hobbyists. There are also some plans online for building a rough version yourself using raw materials, which is closer to what old-timers would have done, but that path takes a lot more time, more risk, and more trial and error. For this build, I decided to source the core components, the nickel and iron plate assemblies and the proper enclosure, from a small supplier that specializes in this kind of alkaline battery, rather than trying to fabricate the plates completely from scratch. Cost-wise, this is not a cheap impulse buy, and I want to be honest about that up front. It's more expensive than picking up a basic lead-acid battery of a similar size, and depending on capacity, it can land somewhere in the range of a serious investment, not pocket change. That price difference is actually one of the most important economic questions in this whole video, and we'll come back to it once we see how the thing performs. Once the core components arrived, I laid everything out on the workbench to get a proper look at what I was actually working with. The plates are noticeably heavy for their size, which makes sense once you remember this is basically iron and nickel doing the work, not some lightweight modern material. The enclosure was a simple, tough container meant to hold the alkaline electrolyte solution without leaking or corroding from the inside. Before doing anything electrical, I checked every connection point carefully because alkaline solutions can be irritating if they leak or splash, so proper gloves and eye protection were non-negotiable for this build. I also made sure the space where I planned to set this up in the cabin had decent ventilation, since some off-gassing can happen with these batteries during charging, and you don't want that building up in a sealed room. Safety wasn't optional here, it was step one before any wiring or testing began. After confirming the container was solid and properly sealed, I moved on to mixing and adding the electrolyte solution, following the specifications for this particular battery design. This part felt almost old-fashioned in the best way, more like a small chemistry project than typical electronics work. Next came connecting the plate assemblies in the correct configuration, making sure polarity was right, and double-checking every terminal connection before even thinking about hooking it up to anything that used power. I wanted to be deliberate here, because with a project like this, a sloppy connection early on can throw off everything you observe later, and you'd end up blaming the technology for a mistake that was really just poor assembly. With the physical build sitting there, wired and sealed, ready for its first real charge, there was a strange kind of anticipation in the room. This wasn't some sleek gadget promising instant results. It was a slow, deliberate piece of old engineering, waiting patiently to see if it could still do the job it was designed for, 100 years after people first started relying on it. With the battery fully assembled and the electrolyte solution settled, it was finally time to give it a first charge and see if this old design would actually wake up. I connected it to a small charging source using a modest, low current setting, since these batteries are known to prefer a slow, steady charge rather than anything fast or aggressive. There was no dramatic spark, no loud hum, nothing that felt like a movie moment. Just a quiet, steady process with a small meter showing the voltage slowly climbing as the plates did their work. That quietness was actually reassuring in its own way because these old designs were never meant to be flashy, they were meant to be dependable. After letting it charge for a good while based on the general guidance for this size of battery, I disconnected it from the charger and let it rest for a bit before testing. This resting period matters because you want a fair reading of what the battery can actually hold, not just a temporary spike right after charging. Once it had settled, I checked the voltage again, and it was sitting in a healthy, expected range for a battery of this type. That alone didn't prove much yet, since plenty of batteries can look fine sitting idle with nothing pulling from them. The real test was going to be putting an actual load on it and seeing how it behaved under real use. So I started small, connecting it to a basic low-power light, the kind you might use for reading or basic visibility in the cabin at night. The light came on steadily with a warm and even glow, and it held that brightness for a noticeably long stretch of time. There wasn't the kind of gradual dimming you sometimes see with lower quality batteries as they run low, at least not in this early stage of the drain. Next, I tried something a little more demanding, running a small fan for a while to see how the battery handled a slightly higher draw. The fan ran consistently, no stuttering, no sudden drop-off, which was honestly a bit more impressive than I expected going into this. I wasn't trying to power anything huge. This was never meant to run a refrigerator or heavy tools, but for small loads, lighting, charging basic devices, running a fan, it held up steadily, and that was exactly the kind of result I was hoping to see. What struck me most was not raw power, because in that department, this old design isn't trying to compete with anything modern. What struck me was the steadiness, the sense that it just kept doing its job without drama, without babysitting, without needing to be checked on every hour. That's a very different kind of value than the value we usually talk about with batteries. We're used to comparing batteries by how much energy they cram into a small space, how fast they charge, how light they are to carry. This iron battery loses on almost all of those measures compared to a modern lithium setup. But there's a second kind of value that doesn't get talked about nearly as much, and that's simple durability over time, the ability to be abused a little and still keep working. I intentionally let the battery sit unused for several days at one point, without any charging or maintenance, just to see what would happen, since that's a realistic situation for a cabin that isn't visited every single day. When I came back and checked it, the voltage had dropped only a small amount, nothing dramatic, nothing that suggested the battery had been damaged by simply being left alone. That's a meaningful difference from some other battery types, which can degrade noticeably, or even become unsafe if they're left sitting in a partially charged or fully drained state for long stretches. I also tried something a bit rougher, drawing the battery down much further than you'd normally want to with a typical lead-acid battery, just to see how it reacted to a deep discharge. With many common batteries, doing that repeatedly is a good way to shorten their lifespan significantly, sometimes permanently damaging them after just a few deep drains. The iron battery didn't seem to mind nearly as much, coming back up to a normal charge afterward, without any obvious sign of being harmed by the experience. Now, I want to be honest and grounded here because it would be easy to get carried away and make this sound like some miracle discovery, and that's not what this is. This is a heavy, bulky, old-fashioned way of storing a modest amount of power, and it is not going to replace a full home battery system or run serious appliances. The upfront cost is real, and for someone just wanting cheap, basic backup power, there are more affordable options on the market today that will get the job done for less money upfront. So where does the economic thinking actually come in? It comes in when you stop looking at price alone and start looking at total cost over time, plus how much hassle and risk you're willing to tolerate. A cheaper battery that needs replacing every few years, that can be ruined by one accidental deep discharge or one harsh winter, ends up costing you again and again over a couple of decades. An old, unglamorous option like this, if it really does last anywhere close to what history suggests, might end up being the cheaper choice in the long run, even with a higher price tag on day one. That's the same kind of thinking that applies to a lot of purchases outside of batteries too, tools, appliances, even vehicles, where the sticker price tells you very little about what something will actually cost you over its full lifetime. Of course, a small home experiment like this one isn't a scientific lab test, and I'm not claiming to have proven exactly how many decades this particular battery will last sitting in my cabin. What I can say is that after this first real round of charging, using, resting, and deep discharging, the battery performed exactly the way the old description said it should. steady, forgiving, and completely undramatic in the best possible sense. For a small cabin that just needs reliable basic power, lighting, charging simple devices, running a small fan now and then, this old design earned a real place in the setup, sitting quietly in the corner, doing its slow and steady job the same way it was designed to do it 100 years ago. Looking at that battery sitting quietly in the corner of the cabin, I found myself thinking less about voltage and more about what this whole project actually proved. It didn't prove that old technology is always better than new technology, because in most cases, that's simply not true. What it proved is something a little more specific, and honestly more useful, which is that the best tool or system depends entirely on what job you're actually asking it to do. If you need to power a phone that fits in your pocket, this iron battery is a terrible choice. Heavy, bulky, and completely impractical for that purpose. But if you need something to sit in a cabin, get ignored for weeks at a time, tolerate a cold snap, survive being drained too far by accident, and still come back to life without complaint, suddenly the equation flips completely. That's really the core lesson hiding inside this whole build. The idea that value isn't a fixed number, it shifts depending on your specific situation, your habits, and what you're willing to trade off. A lot of people watching this might be wondering if they should go build one of these for themselves. So let's talk honestly about who this actually makes sense for. If you own a cabin, a workshop, a boat, or any off-grid space that sits unused for stretches of time and you're tired of replacing batteries that die from neglect or deep discharge, this starts to look like a genuinely smart long-term investment. If you're someone who values not having to think about maintenance very often, who would rather spend more up front and then mostly forget about it for years, that mindset lines up well with what this battery offers. On the other hand, if you need portable power, fast charging, or the maximum amount of energy squeezed into the smallest, lightest space possible, you're better off sticking with modern lithium options, because that's simply the job they're built for. And if you're on a tight budget right now and just need basic backup power without much complexity, a simpler, cheaper battery might make more sense for your situation today, even knowing you might replace it sooner. None of these are wrong answers, they're just different answers depending on what you actually value and what your life looks like. There's also a hidden cost in this whole experiment that I think deserves honest mention, and that's time. Sourcing the components, learning how these batteries actually work, assembling everything carefully, and testing it properly took real hours out of my week, hours that have their own value, even if we don't usually put a price tag on them. If your time is extremely limited, or if working with chemicals and careful wiring isn't something you enjoy, that labor cost is very real, and it should factor into whether a project like this makes sense for you personally. For me, that time wasn't wasted, because I actually enjoy this kind of hands-on learning, and there's something satisfying about understanding exactly how the thing keeping your lights on actually works, rather than just trusting a sealed box you bought off a shelf. But I want to be fair to anyone watching who might not feel that way, because not everyone needs to become their own battery engineer, and that's a completely reasonable position too. There's one more thing worth saying honestly, and it's about expectations. I didn't build this expecting it to feel exciting, and it doesn't. Not in the way a new gadget feels exciting the day it arrives. It feels more like planting a slow-growing tree, unremarkable at first, valuable mainly because of what it quietly saves you from dealing with later. That's a different emotional payoff than most purchases give us, and it took me a minute to appreciate it for what it actually is. What I keep coming back to, though, is how this small project mirrors bigger decisions we all make with money, decisions that go far beyond batteries or cabins. We're constantly told to chase the newest, lightest, most efficient version of everything, and often that's genuinely the right call. But every once in a while, an older, heavier, less glamorous option quietly does a better job for a specific need, simply because it was built with a different kind of durability in mind. The trick isn't picking old versus new as some kind of loyalty test. The trick is asking honestly what you actually need something to do, day after day, year after year, before you decide what better even means. A battery that can be forgotten for weeks, punished by cold, drained too far by accident, and still bounce back without complaint, isn't just a neat historical curiosity. It's a reminder that reliability and forgiveness can be worth more than raw performance, depending on where and how you actually use something. That's true for batteries, and if you think about it, it's true for a lot of the tools, equipment, and even habits we build our lives around. Sometimes the boring, sturdy option sitting quietly in the corner is doing more real work for your wallet than the shiny thing getting all the attention. This little iron battery isn't going to change the world, and it was never trying to. It's just going to sit in that cabin year after year, doing its slow, steady, unglamorous job long after flashier batteries and other setups have already been thrown away and replaced. And honestly, there's something quietly satisfying about that, about building something that isn't designed to impress anyone, just designed to last. If this kind of practical, money-minded experiment is something you enjoy, I'd genuinely love to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me if you'd actually consider building or buying one of these for your own cabin, boat, or off-grid setup. Because I read every single one, and it shapes what we test next. And if you know someone who's into off-grid living, old technology, or just loves a good hands-on experiment like this, do me a favor and share this video with them, because the whole point of this channel is figuring these things out together. Thanks for sticking with me through this slow, steady 100-year-old experiment, and I'll see you in the next one.